Robin Zander, scene A1.
Hello, I'm Robin Zander, and welcome back to Snafu, a podcast about sales and behavior change. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Sally Thornton. Sally is the founder and CEO of Forshay, a company that helps other companies operate better together. They build great teams and help great teams work better. Sally is going to be coming on stage at Responsive Conference on day 1. That is September 18th. And if you want to learn more about Sally and her work, you should come to Responsive Conference September 18th and 19th at OMCA, the Oakland Museum of California. You can learn more at responsiveconference.com. Sally's somebody I have looked to as a thought leader about the future of work and the future of teams, how teams work better together for many years. So it was really a pleasure to sit down with her and talk cold plunging and our love of adrenaline and how teams can tactically change how they work, improve how they work, and prepare together for her to come on stage at Responsive Conference. So I hope you enjoy this short 30-minute conversation with my friend Sally, and keep an eye out for more. She's going to be on stage at Responsive Conference this September. Now, straight into the interview. Okay, so Sally, you just started the conversation by saying, bring it. I'm pretty sure we need to start with a conversation about cold plunging and a mutual love of caffeine. Ostensibly, we're going to talk about work a little bit today, but mostly I just want to, I want to talk about the endorphin hits that I think keep you and I both going.
It's essential, right? Like, how do we do our best work? We have to be fueled. And why not fuel your brain with, all the good neurotransmitters that already exist? There's the inside and then the caffeine. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming onto the podcast today. And even more, we're recording this in early August with September and Responsive Conference right around the corner. I'm so excited that you're going to be coming on stage at Responsive Conference 2024.
Thank you. Me too. It's a joy.
Before we get back to cold plunging and coffee and everything else, it's been fun as I've been preparing for this interview. You've been talking about the future of work for longer than Responsive Conference has been around, which is saying something, right? We started in 2016. The movement was founded in 2014. Your TEDx talk was 9 years ago now. When did you shift from being somebody who was, I think about it as like working in the business versus on the business. When did you shift from being somebody who was working to somebody who was also thinking about how we work?
They were the same for me. So, well, sort of. When I became an entrepreneur. So I basically learned about the future of work through tragedy, which, I don't think we go into existential questions, I'll speak for myself, without like really being, kicked off our tush. So my brother was killed in a plane crash when I was 8 months pregnant, 21 years ago. And I was a workaholic, and I thought that was great. I was a Midwesterner who worked her way through college and then went to New York and worked so much and worked at Bay Area so much. So I really thought that was the good path, Robin. I was like, this is it. And then when my brother was killed, my mom basically said to me, I'm a feminist. I really want you to work, but I think you need to rethink work because I just lost my son. You're about to have your son and you work a lot. And so it was just this oh shit moment. And so I dove into the science of work and I tried to figure out how can I be a good parent when shit happens and planes crash and you may not have your children forever, and fulfill my ambitions, which was, I really like work. I really get fulfilled by helping people. And so figuring out that Venn diagram of, do work you love, make a living, grow and learn, you love learning. I love listening to all your podcasts and learning about your work has been such a joy. So anyway, that was my conundrum. So I couldn't figure it out in the workplace. That's why I became an entrepreneur. But my entrepreneurship was around figuring out what is the future of work, because it clearly wasn't female. And I was a working mom looking around going, where are all the women? And it clearly wasn't about actually doing good work and seeing your kids. It was really this sort of you can choose.
Binary.
Yeah. And so that felt shitty. And I felt like the only way I could solve on that was to hang around people who are way smarter than I was. So I started working with Stanford Clayman, which is the gender research arm of Stanford. I started working with the Center of Longevity, Stanford Center of Longevity. There's looking at all this data around what we don't see, right? Because social science is the way you feel about work, the way you feel about your identity, but you don't see it because you just grow up in it. So I started questioning everything, and that's why I started talking about the future of work. But honestly, it was just kind of a gateway drug to talk about humans. So when I talked about the future of work, I wasn't talking about AI. I mean, I did get to talk to Vivian Ming and amazing leaders in AI, but inevitably it was always the human side. So once the pandemic happened and kind of everyone caught up with the fact that actually females matter and flexibility matters and all these things that I was having to get on a stage and say and be weird, now that's like not interesting.
Right.
Now I can actually say it's actually about people and it's about the future of teams. So I don't even really say much about the future of work anymore because I think that is so dominated by AI. I talk about the future of teams and how complex it is and how do we see the complexity and understand it. Like my newest visual is like a DNA strand because we can't say that the future of teams is one thing. It's many things because we are, we need that physical fuel. Like you and I were talking about with cold plunges, we need social connection, right? We need, intellectual stimulation and creativity. Like we need all these things. And so often in work, we tend to like, oh, now we're all interested in this one thing, creativity. Okay, let's all do design thinking. Oh, now we're interested in DEI.
Or AI,
okay,
yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like, now we're interested in well-being.
Right, it's actually been all of these things all along.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so I have the weird website that no one understands because I'm like, the future is holistic. And people are like, what? Do you do recruiting? They want to put you in like the box. Like, do you do recruiting? Like, sure. But that's that's just like part of it, right?
Right.
So anyway, that's the long answer to your short question.
I love it. And it's fun, actually. I'm going to have to steal this bone away from my dog in case you hear it in the background. She's going to be disappointed in me because I'm taking away her toy, but it's a noise in the background. For me, much of my learning starts and ends with the physical. I was a cross-country runner from 8 years old to 18. That was like the entirety of my identity. At 18, I walked off the cross-country team and walked into a gymnastics gym, and there was that moment of awe where I just saw things possible that I didn't know what was possible before. And I've never lost that. I have that today in my pursuit of one-arm handstands, or every damn morning I get in the cold plunge, which we will come back to now that we keep alluding to. But and then when I applied that to work, it boiled down to human behavior. It boiled down to habits. It boiled down to like, okay, how am I in how I communicate with myself, how I communicate with my family, how I communicate with colleagues and employees and clients and on. The grocer at the grocery store, right? And then how do we work together? Whether that is as simple as right a barista at a coffee shop, or Marie and Nicole with whom I'm co-producing Responsive Conference this year. Yeah. But it really is that, recognizing what's possible. Actually, Vivian, you mentioned, is my former boss of 10 years ago. We worked together at SoCo.
No.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, Vivian Ming, who unfortunately is not going to be on stage at Responsive this year, but hopefully maybe in 2025. I was her first employee at SoCos. I was at the time running a private practice working with kids with autism, and she was spinning up some technology to help special needs kids because she is a special needs parent. And we ended up growing SoCos, mostly on her speaking. She would, appear on stage, and then all of a sudden we'd have an inflood of people who wanted to work with her. But that sense of what is possible in human potential, and Vivian really taught me that when somebody, maybe underrepresented, or maybe me seeing a gymnast for the first time says, oh, that is a person who looks like me doing something that I didn't know was possible, all of a sudden it becomes possible for me to dream of doing that thing.
Yeah. She was one of my favorite interviews. I had a lot of interviews. I was going to write a book on the future of work. And then I had to put a pin in it when my daughter had a significant trauma because life matters more than the work part. But she was I'm sure the people are going to listen to this and they're like, I gave you an interview, but like, she was one of my favorites. She was incredible. Yeah.
Let's go back to your beginnings as an entrepreneur. So your brother died in a airplane crash. Plane crash. Walk me through the next couple of months, the next couple of years after that. What was that like?
Well, I'm sure no one listening is like a stranger to grief. What was different about this grief, because I just helped my dad die, and that was a slow, loving, like nothing left unsaid,
Hmm.
beautiful death. This was he's only 37, shock, and like just gut wrenching. Like I remember walking into a store in Redwood Shores and being like, why is everyone walking around? Like I didn't understand how life could go on, and that no one was like screaming like like the scream picture.
Yep.
So I just really had a total meltdown. And then I'm about to be a parent. So like, it's like, but you have to adult. So it was really shitty. And it took years for me to figure out and make sense of it. And then, now I have humor with him. Like he loved being the center of attention. Like he had leukemia when I was young, and he survived, and he became a skydiver, and he was a flying Elvi. And now I'm like, I've named a fucking company after you, Will. Like my brother is so happy. I believe in energy. So like, we all make meaning in our own ways. And for me, he changed my life. He changed my life when I was alive, and he changed my life and when he crossed over, and I became kind of Buddhist. I questioned everything. It really helped me question American culture.
Hmm.
Spirituality really helped me question American culture, because that whole idea of like good things happen to good people, right? Like there's a lot of like interesting myths.
Right.
And so we get really, I found this observing others, that when people get cancer, everyone's like, what? Right? And when people die, we look shocked. And yet from a Buddhist perspective, that's like, well, of course, like our bodies have disease and we die. And it's not like this shock. And so I just found it really interesting to look at all of the ways in which we expect life to be, to question it. That's kind of what happened from it, was just questioning of everything. And honestly, a lot of light, like a lot of levity in moments of shitty gravity. So I view grief very differently now, and living very differently. So it just changed everything. That's all.
Just casual. Just a
Yeah.
drop. It's striking to me. You say, I'm sure nobody listening is a stranger to grief, and yet we don't talk about grief
Mm-hmm.
in the workplace or more broadly, right? I don't know if there's maybe some amount of gender difference. I certainly only really started to confront grief in the form of heartbreak, in the form of my best friend getting breast cancer, other things like that in my 30s. Um, we don't have tools as a society to process grief.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have any recommendations for me, for anybody, around grief. It's kind of outside the scope of the future of work, but it's so human,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's
it's an
it's the whole living.
underdeveloped, I think, conversation in society today.
So yes, and tool wise, I think I'm a big fan of books. I think I buy like 10 a week, and I read like one chapter. I like to buy them and honor the authors. Listen to a podcast, and then I tend to get distracted. I'm a big fan of Susan Cain. She wrote a bittersweet book that I love, and I got to
Yeah.
work with her actually. She was a client. Um, I think there's such good science around the philosophy, the ways in which human behave, cultural, social. I think you have to go into the angle of what really interests you around grief. So for me, it became more that spiritual side, but I think for others, it's the science, and for others, it's the social, and for, there's a lot of ritual. So I don't feel like I have a tool other than to say your own curiosity.
Hmm.
And to whatever you're interested in, if you put it into Amazon or whatever your favorite book, and like there is stuff out there. It's just a matter of whether we're open to absorbing it. So my favorite verb this past year has been like, what can you metabolize? Because I
Hmm.
feel like we highly value intellect in our culture. But actually, like I
The
saw you had
emotional
Charles Duhigg.
processing.
Yes, exactly. It's like, what are we absorbing, and what is actually changing who we are? That for me, I think everyone has their own angle into grief. But I also think from a workplace perspective, when we used to put people in boxes. Like you can't feel at work. You can just, talk about your work. The pandemic really shifted that, right? Where everyone does more check-ins and says like, how's it going? Um, it's just we know from a science perspective that actually people are able to then sink into their work more productively, where we used to believe that was a distraction. Like, oh my God, when can we get to the real meeting? How long do we have to talk about our feelings?
Yeah.
Certainly there's some teams who might have overshared.
Sure.
And
And
so,
some people never adopted those practices.
right. So in that spectrum, I'm a super boring moderate in many ways, but like I'm super super boring in the sense of like, let people have feelings, but yes, it's not the reason we gather at work, right? It's both can be true.
Yeah.
I love Brené Brown talks about it, I think really well, which is like, you're there, but you're not therapizing, right?
Sure.
It's just, you're just seeing each other as
Family
humans.
versus sports team, right? And I think there's some truth in both in work, but for me as an athlete, I'm like, no, sports team. We are here to get a goal done, right?
That's right.
And within that, there can be enormous bonding and closeness that comes as a result of a shared mission.
100%. Yeah. And to pretend that we're not, all going through stuff, especially when it's a shared experience like the pandemic, or, there's so many people who had grief during the pandemic that it was consequential, right?
What was the transition from New York workaholic come to San Francisco in 1999 and then become an entrepreneur? Like, what was that? What did you transition into, and what was that like?
So I was working for Ernst & Young in New York, where the more hours you bill, the better human you are.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm very interested in compensation systems because I was designing compensation systems at Ernst & Young. So it was like global stock plans for Coca-Cola and Procter and Gamble. And, this was before behavioral economics won a Nobel Prize. So we used to believe that like, if you design the perfect compensation plan, people will act rationally. Yay for science. That's like not even close to true. So when I still believe that when I went to the Bay Area in '99, because it was still like stock options were going to solve everything, right?
Yep.
Everyone was going to act rationally. So my workaholism coincided with that systems thinking, and then when I got kicked off my tush, and I became a fan of science and started following all the behavioral scientists who were winning prizes, I was like, oh, KKK. Check. Like, so I'm going to build my own company where we actually have a compensation system that we're all in the same thing. So we have like a shared, I only win if my team wins. My team only wins if I win,
Yep.
right? I have a transparent P&L. So my team can make decisions about where should we invest and where should we cut costs versus they have to come to me and be like, can I buy a new computer or can I? So a lot of it has my workaholism has transferred into how do we rethink the structure of work so that it's not more work is better. That's probably the fundamental shift from workaholism. And the science of work has shown us that when we take breaks, nap, cold plunge, exercise, we're actually more creative thinkers. And that's what matters in the future of work. So it's also breaking that myth that like workaholism is actually what we want as leaders. I don't want, as a CEO who cares about her bottom line, I don't want my people working 80 hours a week. I want them napping, rowing, doing these things because the creative output is the value, because we're not building widgets. There's very few people who are listening to this podcast who aren't valued on creativity as their highest mark. And that requires not workaholism, but it requires that integrated way of living. And it's frankly just a better way to live.
It's a better life. Yeah. I don't know if you know Alex Pang, who wrote the book Rest. He's going to be on stage at Responsive Conference this September.
Awesome.
But he talks about rest as not just like, okay, you're asleep or you're meditating, right? But it's kind of the strategic advantage. It's rest in all of its permutations, exactly what you just described. For me, there's a level of, if I'm taking a break from Zoom meetings or from email or from writing SOWs, I don't want to sit on a beach and rub coconut oil into my belly. Like that's not what rest is for me. It's, I'd rather be doing Muay Thai under the palm trees than sitting on a beach, right? It tends to be something very intense, often very physical or like emotionally stimulating in a very different direction from my day-to-day work life. And that can be a new and kind of revised definition of rest.
I love it. Yeah, I also think deliberate play, so
Nice.
like that has an element to it. And I think sometimes people think of that as rest. I'm like, no, you still need to sleep. Like these are so yeah, we're complex. I think it's super fascinating.
Yeah. I recently, we're going to come straight into cold plunge now. Got a new plunge. I had built, so I grew up in the mountains every summer, jumping into literally ice covered lakes. So maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I built a cold plunge out of a 19 cubic foot chest freezer, right? That I
Oh,
converted. I
wow.
coated the inside and like ran it a few hours every day and turned it into a literal ice bath in a chest freezer. Sold that last year and went out and actually bought a commercial plunge, which I'm now using, and I've had that about a month now, doing it every day. And what's really fascinating is I will go to great lengths to do anything but cold plunge first thing in the morning, right? So it's like, it's not that hard. I can get out of bed, walk straight to the cold plunge, get in it, and be done with like the hardest part of my day. But instead, it's like, oh, I could check the mail. I forgot to do that yesterday. Let me let the dog out. Oh, she's now barking. Let me go get her. I could make some tea. Let me listen to a podcast, right? And like 90 minutes will go by before I do the quote unquote first thing of the morning, which is get into my cold plunge at 39 degrees for 1 to 3 minutes. That's the mark. And as you were describing creative work or ingenuity in the workplace, if we don't necessarily want to use the word creativity, right? But like the strategic advantage of deep work or thoughtful work, or right, what is, rather than just answering email ad nauseum, right? What are those things that
Mm,
can actually level up my workplace or my colleagues or my job? It's as hard as getting into the cold plunge. Like it
mm.
requires a level of focus, it requires a level of discipline, and there's a million other things that I might rather do than do that, brain sweat necessary to figure out what is it needs to be done and what can I do to move that forward. And that's a daily reminder for me getting into the cold plunge of like, yeah, what are the hard things that I'm avoiding? Because
Mm.
because they're hard and not
Yep.
not just busy work, not just shuffling papers on my desk.
That's so funny because that was the one question I wanted to ask you when you wanted to talk about it. I was like, is this easy for him? Like, am I the weird one? Because I fucking hate it.
Um, so there's a story told in my family at I think I was 6 or 7, and my sister who's 6 years older. So we were hiking in the High Sierra one summer, and we came across a literal ice covered lake with just like a little hole on the side of the shore. And my dad like broke away some of the ice and went in up to his head and just kind of like walked into the ice covered lake. And my sister at 12 or 14 followed suit, and I put my feet in and was like, no, I can't do this.
No.
And so
NFW.
now in my late 30s, I am the member of my family who jumps into every ice covered lake that we find. We were just in the High Sierra 2 weeks ago as a family with a bunch of friends, and I feel like I'm doing penance for the rest of my life, getting into cold water to make up for that moment when my dad got in and my sister got in and I did not. It never stops being hard, but I like that about it, right? And
Mm,
particularly, I there's a lot of addiction in my family. There's a lot of my uncle
mm.
died of alcoholism and pills. My mother's father died of alcoholism. I never met him, and I recognize in myself a tendency towards addiction, right? You mentioned
Mm.
skydiving. I went skydiving one time and will never again, because what happens then is 6 months later, Robin starts base jumping in wingsuits and then crashes
Yep.
into a wall and dies. Like I'm enough of an adrenaline junkie that I've been pretty disciplined about pursuing things that are hard to do during and feel great after, as opposed to things that are easy to do during and
Mm.
then you suffer the consequences later. So alcohol, or yeah, this is like a core part of who I am as an adult, because
That's a book, Robin. That is really well said.
it's taken me a long time to
Yeah.
figure it out, right? Because, like, I mean, even sugar or alcohol, I gave up
Yeah.
sugar at the start of this year and haven't really eaten any sugar at all this year because it feels great during, and then I feel really shitty afterwards. I stopped drinking 4 or 5 years ago. Never had a problem with alcohol, but always kind of side eyed it. Right. And especially I used to own a restaurant, so alcohol was readily available. Um,
Yep.
but always would find that there's a temptation to enjoy now and suffer the consequences later. And with cold plunging or with exercise or really all of my addictions in my life today, including work, there's a this is hard to do, and it gets
Yep.
harder to do the more you do it, right? 3 minutes in a 39-degree bath is harder than 1 minute in a 39-degree bath. But the benefit continues to grow the more you do it. So you do the hard
Yeah.
thing and you feel great afterwards. And that's the kind of addiction that I let myself pursue.
I think that's brilliant. Also, for the listeners, you can do 55 degrees.
100%. Or
So
when I'm yeah.
I literally do the minimum effective dose, Robin. So I'm like, I went to literature and I was like, what is the hottest you can be? Which is 55. And then what's the minute? So then it's like you have to be staying there at least 5 minutes. So, there's like a trade off. But
Oh,
I get
yeah.
I get numb by about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm like, I could stay in 10, and then I put on music and I dancing around. But I'm like, it's 55 still works. Just
Okay.
saying.
Okay. Okay.
For listeners who are like NFW, there's multiple paths.
So, what's your history with cold plunges?
So I grew up in Minnesota thinking you were all crazy because there are a lot of people in Minnesota who do the cold
Right,
plunge.
of course. You don't have to own a cold plunge. You just hop outside in the winter
Yeah,
and freeze.
yeah, yeah. So I thought they were all crazy. But being the person of science and liking to feel good after, I've only recently did it. And I had to buy the commercial one too, because for me, it was like, if there's any friction, and this goes to my habits, there's any friction, like
Yeah.
NFW, you know
Yeah.
how many times I'm going to say it? So it has to be cleaned by a little cleaner, or, perfectly at the temperature where I'm not having to put ice in. Because when I had to do it myself, it was like once a month. And then once it became, I did Nordic Wave for those of you who are interested. I could just step into it.
Yeah.
Now I do it whenever I'm home. So I'm not home every day, but the days I'm home, I do it. And I laugh with you on the like, some days I can go right into it, and other days I'm like, maybe coffee first, maybe something else first.
Maybe I'll do it later. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah.
The way, again, fascinated with habits and behavior change as a lifetime interest. When I am traveling and come back, I don't start with a minute at 39 degrees. I start with any short period of time, right? I keep it that temperature always, but getting in for 1 second counts, right? And
Nice.
just giving myself the permission. And what I learned from my old Stanford professor, BJ Fogg, is the celebration of the tiniest possible success increment, right? And for me, that's okay, 1 second, full submersion in freezing cold water, that counts. You're done, right? And then anything
Awesome.
beyond that is just upside, is just bonus.
I remember him. I went to one of his talks where he's like, floss one tooth. And I was like,
Yeah,
that is so good. It's so
yeah,
hilarious. You won't forget it. Like, floss one tooth. And he's like, yeah, works.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anything else to add on cold plunge before we move off of that?
No, everyone give it a try. Feels so good. That's it. Just sell it.
Um, talk to me about the work that you do today. Talk to me about what Forshay has turned into and the kind of clients you serve, and like what was the trajectory from first starting out as an entrepreneur to the work that you do today.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so I started on the interim side. So I started wanting to give companies like Shutterfly, who their CMO was going on maternity leave, and she was French. And she was like, I'm not taking your stupid American maternity leave. I'm French. And so, but you can't have a CMO gone for 6 months, right? So I started with the interim market because no one was solving on it. And it
Mm-hmm.
helped me both support women leaders who wanted to take breaks and also fill it with women who wanted something in between the work 80 hours a week or stay at home. So that was the beginning. And then what I learned was men wanted this thing and, baby boomers and Gen Z, like everyone ended up wanting this sort of flexible model, and companies wanted access to high quality talent that they couldn't easily find. This was before Upwork, and even Upwork, still exists, and we haven't lost any business from them because it's a
Of
different
course.
model. We're
Right.
curated. Yeah. But like before, I had to explain what our model was, right? And it was actually Pixar who said, expanded us into executive search, because they said, you understand our culture And when we work with the big firms, exec search firms, they are pretty much a pyramid scheme. Like you get sold by the partner and then you work with an associate and you pay a lot of money. I can't believe they still exist, to be honest. So Pixar had us move into executive search because it's essentially the same model. We're recruiting and we understand the culture element, and the skill element, frankly, isn't hard to figure out. It's the culture element that's harder to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I was working with Stanford Clayman, I was working with all these PhDs in social science, behavioral science. And that's when I started to realize that DEI was a whole practice within interim that needed like more support, that people wanted to understand psychological safety and how to implement it. So we got to work with Airbnb and help them create their belonging index and really cool stuff that's around the system of work. So it's kind of these three pillars. Like we do interim, interim HR, marketing, finance, anything kind of the ops. We do executive search, but only for companies who already believe in the fact that what we do is, that model makes sense and not the big company model. And then we do like the system of work, right? Organizational design, ways of working, leadership development, DEI. So someone said it faster than I just said it, which was, you make great teams and you make teams great. And I was like, okay, as long as it doesn't sound too political. I was like, that's a little close to what.
That's a good tagline. No, that works.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a little weird because I don't just do. Yeah. And the people are like, I want to put you in a box. And I'm like, but why? It's so much more interesting, because here's the beauty part of it. I can sit in front of anyone and say, what problem actually are you facing? And help them with that problem versus all I do is play CPOs all day. Like, that's so boring. I would have to talk to 700 companies, right, to get like 10 clients, versus this way I can genuinely consultatively sell and say, like, what's hard about teamwork? It could be we need to hire. It could be we need learning and development. Like, whatever it is, I have the bench of people who are wonderful humans, and that way I can genuinely actually improve the work and have more of a relational approach with my clients versus a volume approach.
Let's talk a little bit about the talk that you're going to be giving and the workshop that you're going to be leading at Responsive. I mean, first of all, thank you for coming on stage. This is, I believe,
I love it.
Your first time certainly on stage, but I don't think you've attended Responsive Conference previously.
No, I feel like the timing's always been like fall is a busy time for me as a speaker.
Yeah.
So I've heard and followed your great work.
Sweet.
So I'm honored to participate. No, for real. I think we're going to do the future of teams. And to be honest, when Marie and I talked last, we were like, ooh, and then we could do this. Like, I kind of created the week before. I hate to do, here's behind the curtain, because I wanted to like flow within your flow. So I want a through line. And so once I understood who your keynotes were, I was like, okay, I want it to flow. So I know it's going to be about the future of teams. And beyond that, I have to like look again at your speakers, and then I'll customize it for your group. But it's always something around the science of how people do their best work individually and collectively.
And what is it that you hope that people walk away with from your session at Responsive Conference?
Something that both they realize they're doing really well, back to the strengths finder, like, oh, I am nailing that. Like Sally said something that I feel really good about because I've got that one. And then there's something that Sally said that I really know I should do, but I want to bridge that knowing doing gap. And there's something in there that I gave them as a tool that they can move it from an idea to action. So I like to be a yes and of like, just know where you're nailing it so you don't just walk away feeling like I have 70 new things I need to do from a conference, because that's not going to happen from your habit knowledge. So I want them to be like, yes, I'm nailing this. I know I'm not doing this, but I'm going to do it now because there's 3 different ways in which Sally said you could enter it, and just so that it feels accessible and doable. Like my favorite compliment after I give a talk is people linking in with me and saying, oh, I did this thing. I'm like, yes!
Action. Yeah, put it into function.
Yes, I'm really there I'm not a good comedian. I could occasionally make people laugh, but like I'm really there to make change.
Sort of a fun way to ask this question, given that you collect books, whether you read them or not, and I'm sitting next to my library here, so ditto. Mm-hmm. What are a couple of books that you haven't finished reading but want to? Can be about the future of work, or otherwise can be about responsive ideas, or much more broadly. But what are some of those ideas, those book ideas, niggling in the background on your bookshelf that you're like, this is one I'm really excited for and I'm going to return to?
Atlas of the Heart with Brené Brown, I started. Love
Can I
having
just
like
bitch about Brene for a minute? I mean, first of all, she's
sure.
phenomenal, right? She's one of those people that, like,
She's
they say
so
don't meet your
fucking good.
heroes. And
Yes.
I've only met her once or twice, but like 3 hours later, she was getting into a car outside of the building and like called out to me and remembered my name from a meet and greet. And I was just like,
Hmm.
that's exactly who I want you to be. But her books, I always, I have thrown multiple of her books at a wall in frustration because it lands so hard. Right?
Mm.
Atlas of the Heart is one of those where I'm just like, oh, I didn't really want the definition to that. That struck too close to home. Thank you. Incredible
Mm.
book that defines a lot of terms that we use much more casually with, I think, deep sincerity is how I would describe it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Atlas of the Heart is one.
Yeah. Artist's Way I have on my bookshelf and I have not opened it.
Okay.
It just sits there.
Yeah.
It's like a really pretty table weight.
I have
um
12 completed Artist Way journals. And so I would add to the Artist Way the morning pages, which is
yeah.
three free written, like handwritten pages every morning, which I've been doing for years now. Feels like a way to get my
Hmm.
crazy out on the page so I don't have to carry it around with me all day.
Brilliant. Yeah. And then the last one I would say is Kim Scott's Respect book. She was kind enough to do a walk and talk with me pre-pandemic. And I loved her radical candor. I love 2x2 matrix. I mean, I came from consulting, like gave me a 2x2 matrix and I'm like so happy. And it was so interesting because I was doing work with Stanford Clayman and we were talking about all this DEI stuff. And then she wrote her next book on it and I had nothing to do with it. It was just one of those things where it's so clear that when she sees something that's important, she can explain it and put another 2x2 matrix and make it actionable. And so even though this is a space I already know, I so appreciate reading how other people describe it and giving a different angle, like a kaleidoscope look on it. So I have that in my bag to bring to Cape Town because, even though I like, again, it's like kind of embarrassing. Like I know this shit. But I want to hear how she talks about it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's end on you're going to Cape Town. Tell us about this
Yeah.
trip, and
Yeah.
thank you again for making time for this interview in between. Right, we're with Cape Town in between now and Responsive Conference.
Yeah. I've never been. My son is studying abroad in Geneva. He's learning physics, and Cape Town was his backup if he didn't get in. And so at the end of his term, he was like, "Where should we go?" Because he gets a little break before he starts school again in fall. And I was like, "Why don't we do that backup place that you said, Cape Town?" I've never been to Africa. Like 2 13-hour flights is a little bit daunting,
Yep.
but I back to the learner. Like I'm super excited. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm meeting local people. There's a women's leadership group that I'm going to meet with called WPO. There's some local residents that a friend of mine who lived there for a year introduced me to. So we're not going to hit the tourist sites. We're going to actually meet people.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah.
And final question, Sally, where can folks go to learn more about you and about your work?
I think the E is LinkedIn. So I'm Sally Thornton. But also the company is forshay.com, Forshay. And they can go and be like, what the hell do you do?
Amazing. Thank you
Thank you.
for sitting down with me today, especially since you're just about to hit the road for multiple 13-hour flights. And thank
Thank
you for
you.
coming on stage at Responsive Conference this September 18th and 19th. I can't wait to see you on stage in person.
Thank you. It's a joy.
Yeah.